Hi everybody, welcome to episode 2 of In the Key of C. Today we're going to be looking at those same 6 chords that we learnt in episode 1, but we're going to be learning them in a new position, in the A-shaped bar chord position, which means the root will be on the A string. Okay, so jumping straight into it, our first chord is the C major, which is built up of the 1st, the 3rd and the 5th. And it goes as follows. So we don't play the low E string. We have our first finger at the 3rd fret of the A string. And then we're barring with our 3rd finger at the 5th fret. We'll be barring the D string, the G string and the B string. Okay, so this chord was covered in the foundations course, and I mentioned in the foundations course, I don't mind if you use your 4th finger to bar or your 3rd finger. Okay, whatever's comfortable. I'm not really conscious of what I do use. I think it does sort of just change depending on the chord progression that I am doing at the time, but I'm happy with either of those. So just move it around. If it's not ringing out and there's notes that aren't sitting right, just move it around the fretboard and explore where the tension might be a little bit less, and then that chord might be ringing out a little bit better. So that's our first chord, the C major. Okay, moving forward into the second chord is a C major 7. Okay, and this beautiful chord I play a lot. It just kind of sits nicely with the fingers and also for the ear. So it's a beautiful chord. The E major 7's made up of the 1st, the 3rd, the 5th and the 7th. And the chord is as follows. So we don't play the low E. We've got our first finger at the 3rd fret of the A string. Then we've got our 3rd finger at the on the 5th fret of the D string. We've got our 2nd finger on the 4th fret of the G string, and our 4th finger on the 5th fret of the B string. And sorry, that E as well, which is barred with our 1st finger. I'm okay if you don't play that, if you just want to play the 4 consecutive strings, but that does add a nice touch to it. That is the 5th. Okay, and you'll notice it's just one note difference from the C major. We're now incorporating that major 7, so practicing just moving between those two is helpful because that is a realistic scenario for chord progressions. Okay, and moving on. So now we're going to be looking at the C dominant 7, and another lovely chord which I still play quite regularly, and the chord is as follows. So we don't play the low E. We've got our 1st finger at the 3rd fret of the A string. We've got our 3rd finger on the 5th fret of the D string. Then our 1st finger as part of the bar is barring the G string at the 3rd fret, and then we have our 4th finger at the 5th fret of the B, and again we have our 1st finger at that 3rd fret, the G, as part of the bar chord. So we have essentially that 1st finger barring the 1st, the flattened 7th and the 5th. Okay, so this one might be a little bit tricky. Just move it around the fretboard so you get comfortable with it. And as I've said before, if they're not sitting right, or if you're having problems with that bar, just go back and practice maybe just a couple of fingers at a time. A couple of strings at a time with the one finger with the 1st or the 3rd, and just get used to the actual finger sitting on a couple of strings or a few strings at a time and move that around. Okay, and the dominant seventh is made up of the first, the third, the fifth, and the flattened seventh. Okay, it's got a lovely tone, very popular in blues and jazz and all sorts of music. Okay, moving on to the next chord. Now we're going to be looking at a C minor. Okay, and the C minor is played as follows. So we don't play the E, we've got our first finger at the third fret of the A string, we've got our third finger on the fifth fret of the D string, we've got our fourth finger on the fifth fret of the G string, and we've got our second finger on the fourth fret of the B string, and again our first finger barring at the third fret of the E string. And this is a lovely chord. It's exactly the same chord in terms of structure as we did with our E position, our E-shaped bar chords up here. Sorry, that's the minor there. And this is one you will be playing a lot as well. This one does sit kind of comfortably. It's coming from that A minor shape. And again, if you're having trouble, just move it around. Practice maybe doing the A minor with your second, third, fourth fingers like that. You're probably used to doing it like that. Just move it around, and then that means when you move it up the fretboard, that first finger's ready to bar. Okay. And the minor is made up of the first, the flattened third, and the fifth. Okay, now moving into the next chord, it is the C minor 7. Okay, and the chord is as follows. We don't play the E, we've got our first finger at the third fret of the A string, we've got our third finger at the fifth fret of the D string, and we've got, we're barring with our first finger that on the third fret of the G string. Then we've got our second finger on the fourth fret of the B string, and our first finger at the third fret of the E string. Okay, this one sits relatively easy once you've got the hand, once you've got your finger working with that bar, then the chord itself's only 2 fingers on top of that. So we also see the C minor 7 made up of the first, the flattened third, the fifth, and the flattened seventh. Okay, I'm playing some arpeggios just to more emphasize the tonality, so you can really hear that. And we will be moving deeper into scales and arpeggios with those chords as well. And the last chord is a C half diminished, also known as a C minor 7 flat 5. Okay, and I love this chord. Okay, and the chord is as follows. So it's just a 4-finger chord, and we're just playing 4 strings, not playing the E. We've got our first finger at the third fret of the A string, then we've got the flattened fifth, okay, which is played with our third finger on the fourth fret of the D string. Then we've got our our second finger on the third fret of the G string, and then we have our fourth finger on the fourth fret of the B string. Okay, and that's a lovely chord. Or it could also be seen as that 7th chord before we move back into our key. Okay, so the minor 7 flat 5 is built up of the first, the flattened third, the flattened fifth, and the flattened 7th. Okay, so I'd really like you just to get them under your fingers. The C major 7, C dominant 7, and we've got the C minor 7, and the C half diminished. Okay, and that means that you'll have now two positions for those 6 chords, the E shape and the A shape, and that will already open you up quite a lot, having those 2 positions for just 6 chords. But you'll be able to see when I layer the next 6 chords that you've got a whole 18. You've got 18 chords to work with, 3 different shape positions. Sorry, yeah, 3 different positions for 1 chord. So it's going to, yeah, definitely open up the fretboard, and I really want you listening to those chords and hearing the difference between the majors and the minors, and don't be too concerned with the 7ths, but it is a good time now to start tuning your ear into a flattened 7th or a major 7. Okay, and that's it, and I'll see you in the next episode. Okay, see you guys.